title clause, and I wish it had come earlier.
Jan Logie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's a great pleasure to follow on from that contribution from that member and endorse all the points that she was making around this. I do want to start this contribution, though, by acknowledging the officials, which I neglected to do in my second reading speech, despite the fact that I was so impressed by the support they offered us and the really long hours they worked and the engagement with the issues that we were raising, and that I feel very grateful, and I think the legislation is better for their contribution, so I do want to acknowledge that. I also I'm really conscious of this debate and how many women are just like their lives are on the cusp of just being completely transformed, and how excited and moved so many thousands of women are feeling right around the country at the moment. And I'm apologising to any of them who may be watching this in advance, because committee stages I feel like I need to deal with some of the gritty aspects of this which aren't so exciting and they're not so celebratory. So but I do want to acknowledge the excitement that they must be feeling. And so just to talk to some of the SOPs and some of the aspects in the Minister's SOP and the reasons that we came to those changes in the Select Committee. So one of the first ones was moving the fact of that the settlement will extinguish certain rights through negotiation. That's part of the settlement. That it means that care and support workers will not be able to take an equal pay case through to the court until 2022. And this settlement is a really significant, it's our first big pay equity settlement using the Act, and it's really, really exciting, and it's a major step towards equality, and it's really important to acknowledge that. And for me, it was also quite important that this aspect that extinguishes the rights through the settlement wasn't put in the purposes. It was an issue that was raised by CVEP in the submission process, that for us as Parliament, while that can be negotiated, that the limits in terms of the settlement through a negotiation, that's really proper, but that there would be some concern for Parliament to be saying that there was a purpose in the legislation was to extinguish any woman's rights. That would be a bad look. And not something we would want to do. But it has a functional role in terms of this piece of legislation. So it's been moved out of the purpose section and into the overview of what this does, which is the purpose is enacting the settlement, and to be able to achieve that, that will involve extinguishing of the rights as they've been agreed. And that seems proper to me. And the compendium change that goes along with that is the change to Part 2, Section 7, and it's an additional clause, Clause 3, which states that to avoid any doubt, the section relating to extinguishing potential claims does not, that this does not affect any claim after 2022, when I hope care and support workers will be ready and revitalised to take the next step towards full equality, and having that discussion around what pay equity looks like in 2022. And it also does not affect the claim or potential claim under the Equal Pay Act for any other workers who aren't care and support workers. So we just wanted to be totally clear that this is not setting a precedent for other workers in terms of the nature of the fact that this is being rolled out over 5 years and that there's no ability to review the pay over that 5 years. So this is an incredible settlement that's been achieved through collective union action and using the courts. And it will be up to the next group of organised workers to come up with their settlement process, and that will be determined on the conditions at the time, and hopefully it will be a new progressive government who won't come to the table with a set amount of money to begin with. So one of the other aspects in the bill that I do want to talk to, Mr. Chair.
Jan Logie.
And just to signal that I am tabling an SOP that hopefully has been tabled, not yet, but will be coming soon. And so I'm seeing some people looking surprised about that. And just to let you know, it's to make an amendment to section 15(1) to make it clear that this Parliament does not expect, and we would not, that the legislation would not allow employers to cut care and support workers' hours in response to this pay increase. And the reason for, and we do believe that actually in terms of the legal situation at the moment, that would be unreasonable and would probably be illegal because they're being paid for at a set amount, the legal amount for those workers for the hours, but we want to make sure that that is a very clear message and it is in the legislation, because I've already heard of 2 cases where employers are telling workers that they will be cutting the hours in response to this. And I know that part of the spirit of this settlement was, and just again kudos to these women workers and Christine and the union, where I know that the training aspects of this bill were in the interest of the development of the health workforce and the knowledge that we've got an ageing population and that we needed more skilled people. And this is about career development for them, but it was also about ensuring the well-being of the people that they're caring for, and they always seem to put them first, which I just think is incredible. And they have also consistently raised concerns about the staff-patient ratios. And if hours are being affected, that will have an impact on those staff ratios, which are set by legal bounds at the moment at a level that is too low for dignity of the workers. So I want to make sure that we put in the legislation a clear message to employers that we will not accept you cutting workers' hours in return for this pay. That money is being given to you to pay them for the hours that you should be employing them for. So I hope that there will be support in the House for that SOP. And just to also just touch on and thank the officials and the unions, I understand, for picking up one of the mistake that maybe we had made in committee around the drafting that had created some uncertainty regarding the fact that we expected care and support workers or people who were primarily doing that work to be paid the full wage, that it wasn't going into kind of being broken off into pieces for payment purposes, and that there has been a clarification of that in the SOP that's come to the House. And that's a great result. And thanks, I suspect, to Peter Cranny again for his eagle eye and helping us sort that, because we certainly wouldn't have wanted to see any more fragmentation or any disadvantage come out of this, and it certainly wasn't the intent in the Select Committee to do that. So I also just want to speak in my final minute of this to the point around that quite a few of the submitters asked us to include vocational support workers in this legislation, that they are in the settlement that was acknowledged that they had a claim and that it needed to be, the funders were MSD and ACC, if I remember correctly, and that I understand that, the work is very, very similar, and there was a kind of a natural fit for them to be included in this. But because the funding streams are different and that is apparently a different job, we've been advised that it was not appropriate to include them in this legislation, and that negotiation had to happen separately. It's a shame that the government couldn't have coordinated their efforts to be able to do this, and it seems like we're going to be wasting our time in this House because that coordination didn't happen, and it's a real shame, because how amazing would it have been to added that group of workers who are clearly deserving to this the settlement legislation, but finally bring on the 1st of July. These women deserve this pay increase.
Ria Bond.
I'm actually